Hello, horror fans, and welcome to J vs. Horror presents Top 10 Tales. Hey, horror fans, welcome back to J vs. Horror. Today we're starting a new series we're calling Top 10 Tales. This series focuses on one of my favorite shows, Tales from the Crypt. And each week we'll feature a different top 10 countdown of some of our favorite Tales from the Crypt topics, including best villains, favorite episodes, and most hilarious episodes. Today I'm starting the series off with my top 10 all time favorite episodes. And just to give a little background, Tales from the Crypt, sometimes titled HBO's Tales from the Crypt, is an American horror anthology television series that ran from June 10th, 1989 to July 19th, 1996 on the premium cable channel HBO. It ran for 7 seasons and produced a total of 93 episodes. The title is based, of course, on the 1950s EC comic series of the same name, and most of the content for the show originated in that comic or in other comics that EC did that were similar, such as The Haunt of Fear, The Vault of Horror, Crime Suspense Stories, Shock Suspense Stories, and Two-Fisted Tales. Because the show aired on HBO, a premium cable television channel, it was one of the few anthology series that was allowed to have full freedom from censorship by network standards and practices. As a result, HBO allowed the series to include content that had not appeared in most television series up until that time, such as graphic violence, profanity, sexual activity, and nudity. Alright, guys, so let's get started with my top 10 favorite episodes of Tales from the Crypt. At number 10, Season 4, Episode 1, None But the Lonely Heart. In this Twisted Tales episode, a conman played by Treat Williams finds a new wealthy widow who is excited to have his company, but it seems that someone is on to him, as he soon gets a series of notes warning him to stop what he's doing or else risk facing the dire consequences. Boxing legend Sugar Ray Leonard makes a cameo appearance as the Gravedigger, and also Tom Hanks with a cameo appearance, who also directed the episode. He plays a video dating service owner in this, and so the setup for this episode is pretty simple. Treat Williams is a disgusting con man who kills old women, and it's funny because apparently he does it within days. Like, he marries a woman, gets her to sign her money over, and within a week or a few days, he does her in. usually through poisoning. Uh, but someone is on to the con man, and so we get a bunch of red herrings about who might be uh, writing these notes to Treat Williams, and we get a pretty fun end here. One thing I would love to mention about this series is that you don't see a lot of ghouls anymore. But in this series, they used ghouls a lot. They weren't always ghosts. They weren't always zombies. There's something in between called ghouls, and this one has a great ghoulish ending. At number 10, None But the Lonely Heart. Number 9, Season 2, Episode 3, Cutting Cards, starring Lance Henriksen and Kevin Feige. Two rival gamblers, played by Henriksen and Feige, face off in a series of gruesome games in order to see who'll leave town when all is said and done. This is a fun episode, and it's also, I believe, the shortest episode in the entire series. It's only about 18 or 19 minutes long. And it gets to the point pretty quick. We have these two gamblers, Lance Henriksen, whose character is named Reno, and you can tell they have a lot of history with each other. There's some indication that they've been involved in some schemes together that didn't work out, and also faced off several times as rival gamblers. And so they make this deal that somebody's going to clear out of town, and they start off with dice, and they both roll boxcars. They roll double sixes, and so they can't beat each other there, and they decide to go outside and play some Russian roulette. And there's a fun scene here where somebody else tries to pull into the parking lot where they're at, and they kind of curse the guy out, and you really see that actually these two are friends. Nobody really knows either of them better than they know each other, and so that kind of gives some weight to where the episode goes towards the end, because they head back inside after the gun doesn't work and start chopping each other's fingers off while playing poker. And it's funny. It's a nice, fun scene where there's, ridiculously, there's doctors on both ends of the table to help them, as they go. And then we get a great end scene where they're both basically in a medical ward, probably some kind of insane asylum too, since they've chopped each other's arms and legs, and all their body parts are gone now. And there's a great final line of pass the gum. At number 9, Cutting Cards. At number 8, Season 3, Episode 3, The Trap. A scheming jerk, played by Bruce McGill, who cannot hold down a job and is verbally and physically abusive to his wife, played by Terry Garr, hatches a plan to fake his own death and collect his life insurance money, unaware that both his long-suffering wife and brother, played by Bruno Kirby, are planning to double-cross him. And this one has a fun cameo from Michael J. Fox, who directed the episode. He plays the prosecutor at the end. I love this one. I like to call it AKA I'm Lou Paloma, because Bruce McGill screams this throughout the episode. I'm Lou Paloma. And it's just a funny episode. This one will probably also go into that top 10 most humorous episodes. Bruce McGill, I remember from a lot of things. He's a great character actor. He's been in stuff like My Cousin Vinny, and I remember him the most as being MacGyver's best friend on the show MacGyver. He would show up once every season or a couple times every season and cause grief for MacGyver. And Bruno Kirby, everyone knows from stuff like City Slickers. So it's a fun episode, and Bruce McGill wants to fake his own death, and his brother is a coroner, so they make this plot or plan to try to get away with this, and his brother passes him some cash to go off to a tropical island and hang out for a while until they're able to clear everything. But the episode takes a turn here when the brother and the wife start to get a little too close to each other, and the whole thing is just comedy. But it's fun at the end to see how he's kind of trapped himself in his own bad plan. Really loved this one. That's number 8, The Trap. At number 7, Season 3, Episode 5, Top Billing. A struggling actor played by John Lovitz kills off his competition, including Bruce Boxleitner, in order to secure a part in a strange production of Hamlet, only to discover that the actors are escaped mental patients and criminals, and that he's instead to play the part of the long deceased Yorick. So this one is another one that's both humorous and kind of diabolical. We see John Lovitz struggling. This even has a cameo from comedian Sandra Bernhard as his agent. And you can see that he's struggling because he doesn't have the classic look that an actor should have, is how the entire plot is presented. And he, instead of going for plastic surgery or anything like that, believes that his acting skills are great enough that he will be noticed at some point, and that it's not all about looks. So even though he's not narcissistic in the way he looks, he is very narcissistic in the way he believes his acting skills come across to everyone. And Bruce Boxleitner is interestingly in this as his competitor. Always liked Bruce Boxleitner from The Scarecrow and Mrs. King. That was a fun early 80s kind of spy show. And in this, Bruce gets the short end of the stick. And this one also has John Astin in it. Of course, he played Gomez in the Addams Family, and he has a great part here as the crazy director who's putting together this production of Hamlet. And it's weird that either one of these guys are that interested in it, because once they get down there, they see the theater is it's off Broadway by about 10,000 miles, I guess is what you would say. It's almost ridiculous that they even went in and tried for the parts. But this one's fun. It has the usual setup of something terrible happens to something terrible, right? We get a mean, nasty person who does mean, nasty things, and then they meet a mean and nasty end. And that's the way about 95% of the Tales from the Crypt episodes shake out. I won't say all of them. There are a few exceptions. But yes, at number 7, that was Top Billing. At number 6, it's Season 3, Episode 11, Split Second. A beautiful but mischievous barmaid, Michelle Johnson, marries a rich lumberjack played by the great character actor Brian James. He offers her a comfortable lifestyle, but when the marriage soon turns sour, especially in the bedroom due to her husband's violent jealous streak, the barmaid begins to take him over the edge when she starts to seduce another young lumberjack. So this episode is all about this barmaid who lucks into marrying a rich lumberjack who, he owns a lumberjack camp. And but as soon as she gets there, the trouble starts. The guys aren't used to having a beautiful woman around, and so they make comments and remarks. And Brian James is just a huge mean guy. I mean, he's always played that role, and he does it well here. He flips out on anyone who even tries to make a joke about him being married or anything like that, or takes a second look at his wife. He violently attacks them, and so the guys realize that he's not the same good guy he's always been. And Michelle Johnson, who gets quite nude in this role, she seems to enjoy this. She sees it as excitement, the jealousy and all that, the violence. It excites her, and so she instigates it further. And then when a young, virile guy shows up who is going to enter this lumberjack competition with them and shows that he's really skilled at cutting wood. She becomes uh, obsessed with getting his attention, and so everything turns bad, and it has a great ending here. And this is one of the tales uh, where there's a few of them like this, where somebody is narrating the story, and usually the person who's narrating the story is the main antagonist, uh, and that always becomes interesting to see how the person narrating the story met an end. And there's even been some where people argue that they don't make sense, but I think it's just for fun, and it does give you that comic book feel. So at number 6, that's Split Second. At number 5, Season 5, Episode 3, Forever Ambergris. After playing second fiddle to an up and coming photographer named Isaac Forte, played by Steve Buscemi, a seasoned but washed up combat photographer named Dalton, played by Roger Daltrey of The Who, cooks up a deadly scheme in order to take him out and get his beautiful wife, played by Lizette Anthony. It also has a little bit of a cameo from Titus Welliver, who wasn't a big actor at the time, but it's interesting to see the people who turn up in these episodes, right? This is one of my favorites. Yeah, it's at number 5. I love the Steve Buscemi character in this, being a guy who sees all this beauty and death and decay and all this stuff, and then Lizette Anthony's character, who she was also in, I think, Look Who's Talking Now. Is that the third one, or Look Who's Talking 2, whatever it was called? And yeah, and Roger Daltrey does a great job in this. You don't see him in a lot of stuff. He has guest appeared in a few other shows, but he's really good in this one as the bad guy Dalton. And it's another episode where something truly horrible happens to someone who's truly horrible. The effects in this one are great. Uh, Roger Daltrey's character of Dalton sees that the character of Isaac is an up and comer. Everyone is saying he's the greatest, and he's got this beautiful girlfriend, and he's just completely jealous, and he wants to get Steve Buscemi to take some awesome shots for him, but he wants to kill him off before he can claim the shots as his own. And so mayhem ensues, and he sends Steve Buscemi off to this camp that he knows has been hit by some kind of biological or chemical warfare. And when he comes back, he seems all right at first, but then the effects start. Yeah, he gets very sick. And then there's a nice little twist here at the end for what happens with Dalton. Bobby plays a little trick on him. And yeah, it's a really fun episode. I think the effects in this are just great. It's one of the most gory episodes, I would say. And it's done very well. The revenge angle is perfect in this one. Yeah, love it a lot. And that's Forever Ambergris at number 5. At number 4, Season 7, Episode 4, Escape. During World War II, two Germans, a traitor played by Martin Kemp, and the man he had betrayed are trapped inside a British prison camp, where they must work together as a team in order to escape. This is one of my favorite episodes, guys, that never gets mentioned, and so I wanted to make sure I gave it a good spot here in my top 10. I really like this one. Martin Kemp plays just a despicable character that gives up his own brigade to have a chance to maybe have more comfortable stay in prison. And then the entire time he's in prison, he's trying to keep himself from being outed as the person who gave up the platoon or whatever. And also he is planning his escape and stabbing people in the prison in the back and going to the warden and telling him other people's plans and just playing everybody against each other. And seems to be very skilled at what he's doing, lying, manipulating people, murder inside the camp to keep himself from being identified. And finally, at the end, of course, he gets his just desserts, and it's served up in a way that I thought was very fun and has something to say about honor, even in the midst of war. And so that's what we had at number 4, guys. Escape. Now at number 3, it's a nice little segue because we're going right into another episode about the horrors of war, right? Uh, this one is season 3, episode 14, Yellow. Set in 1918, the final year of World War I, a general, played by Kirk Douglas, and his son, played by Eric Douglas, uh, encounter a situation in where the son is branded yellow for causing the death of a platoon under his command because he failed to do his job of warning them in case of an enemy sneak attack, and so he is sentenced to death by firing squad. The night before the execution, the general tells his son that he has swapped the bullets with blanks so that his son can survive the planned execution. This one also co-stars Dan Aykroyd and Lance Henriksen. And just a side note, this is the only episode of the entire series that ran longer than 30 minutes. It was directed by Robert Zemeckis, and he used this episode to pay homage to Stanley Kubrick's 1957 film Paths of Glory, which also starred Kirk Douglas and featured some similar themes. Father and son actors Kirk and Eric Douglas portray father and son on screen here for the first and only time, I believe. And it's just a great episode, guys. I mean, for me, this has the best ending of almost all of them. It's got a great twist to it, and there are no sympathetic characters in this, other than maybe Dan Aykroyd. You can make the case that Dan Aykroyd is kind of the guy who's on the outside looking in and doesn't exactly understand either viewpoint. The two main characters are the lieutenant's son, who is a coward and who, you kind of can identify with the fact that he doesn't want to be where he's at. But at the same time, you can't just be a coward. This guy's terrible. I mean, he gives up his entire platoon just so he can have a couple extra seconds to get away. And one of my favorite characters in it is the character of Lance Henriksen, who plays the just, tough as wet leather sergeant who, doesn't care that he's being ordered into his demise or anything like that. He's down for the fight. And that's the character that comes back on the kid and, lets everyone know that he's yellow. He's a yellow son of a bitch. He just says that over and over, and it has a great effect because Lance Henriksen sells the word that becomes the title of the story. Just the way he says it gives weight to it, especially in his final scene in the episode. And so then when it's used again at the end, we really get the meaning. I mean, beyond what we already know of it, we see the meaning that it has to these men in this situation. And so a great twist here at the end. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it. And I hope you guys will enjoy my number 3 pick, Yellow. Now, we go to number 2 and number 1, guys, and these were the toughest for me. There's so many that I could throw in a top 10 that we're going to have to keep doing top 10s because they all deserve to be talked about in one way or another. And at number 2, I have Season 1, Episode 1, The Man Who Was Death. Niles Talbot, played by William Sadler, is a prison executioner who is laid off from his job when the local government abolishes the death penalty. Soon after, he becomes a vigilante, administering his own style of justice to acquitted murder suspects. He gets caught, and soon after that, he has to face his old nemesis, the electric chair. I wouldn't say it was his nemesis until this point, though, right? Great episode here. Of course, stars William Sadler, Roy Brocksmith, who's a great character actor and returns several times in the series, is in this one as well. William Sadler, guys, he comes back later on. He plays Death in one of the opening Crypt Keeper scenes in a later episode. And of course, everyone knows William Sadler comes back for the first Tales from the Crypt film, Demon Knight, where he plays, basically our hero through about 2/3 or 3/4 of that film. In this film, he plays an executioner who is just, he's another one who narrates his own story as he goes. And so you kind of see how maniacal he is because he's also charming. Uh, there was another part that William Sadler did right before this that was very similar, and it was a little TV movie based on a Dean Koontz book called The Face of Fear. And he does this almost exact same character, but in that movie, it's actually used as the twist because you don't know he's this type of character. In this episode, he's like this from the beginning to the end, and he gives you at first a very witty country feel, but then as it goes, you see that he's very much more maniacal than just that. And some of the ways he talks about women too, through the middle of the episode, are there to tip you off that he's not such a great guy. And so yeah, he this whole thing plays like a monologue. Basically, it's his story of what happened, and then we have this great ending where he's not narrating anymore, and we just kind of get to see what happens to Niles. It's actually quite shocking, and I'm sure that line's been used 1,000 times with this episode. I'm sure the Crypt Keeper himself uses it more than a few times in this episode. But yeah, this is a tough call, guys. This was the first episode of the entire series, and what a great series. I mean, these Hollywood heavyweights came together to create this thing that they loved from their childhood, horror comics, which historically are important to horror. If you don't know the story, go look it up, because this is another thing like the Video Nasties, where at some point somebody tried to take it from everyone. And they were pretty successful with the horror comics, but these guys in 1989 brought them back with Tales from the Crypt, and you gotta love it. So that's my number 2 pick, guys, The Man Who Was Death. So that leaves us at number 1. And this has always been my all-time favorite episode. I love every minute of it, and I have always loved it since the first time I saw it, June 10th, 1989. And the episode is, at number 1, Dig That Cat, He's Real Gone. That's right. A carnival daredevil known as Ulrich the Undying, played by Joe Pantoliano, is buried alive for his grand finale. Through a series of flashbacks, he tells the viewers how he was formerly a homeless vagrant who had undergone a doctor's experiment in order to transfer a cat's glands into his brain, giving him its 9 lives and the ability to resurrect. However, during his final stunt, he suddenly remembers that he's made a slight mistake. And it's a mistake that you would expect a guy like this to make, an easy one. So I love this episode. It was always my favorite episode. Also, I got to give some props here to Robert Wool. He's one of my favorite comedians, and he does just a great job in this as the carny guy who does the yelling, and I can't remember exactly what they called him, but yeah, he gets everybody hyped for Ulrich the Undying. So we see Joey Pants as this homeless guy, and we see this Frankenstein-type doctor talking to him about how would you like to live forever and be rich beyond your wildest dreams and all that. And Joey Pants is like, yeah, I'd settle for a sandwich right now. So he goes with him, and he lets the guy do this crazy experiment on him that totally captures the plot and feel of a lot of these old horror comics. It's ridiculous, but it's fun. And so he does this transplant where he gives him the 9 lives of a cat. And of course, being homeless and being basically an alcoholic and not that smart of a guy, he instantly goes into the carnival lifestyle. The doctor gets him into this, and they're going to make some money so the doctor can do more experiments and help more people, right? And so after a test run of this, they make a little bit of money. by just doing deaths and people getting to participate in the deaths and watch the deaths. There's one where he gets shot through the heart with an arrow, and the guys are actually bidding, like paying $1,000 each to take the shot. And but yeah, he gets into this carny lifestyle pretty quick, and Robert Wool is just hilarious as this megaphone caller that runs this carnival, and he's trying to get rich off Ulrich. And my favorite line in this whole thing is after things have kind of gone bad for Ulrich, and he needs to make one big last payout before he gets down to his last life. He tells the Robert Wool character that he wants 100% of the profits, and the Robert Wool character looks at him and says, 100%? Well, that'll leave me with basically nothing. And so you totally get the vibe that he's, whatever was going on, he always had a little something extra going on too, right? And so it's just a fun episode. I don't want to give the end away. I've tried not to do that, but with some of these, the end is just what it is. This one does have a little bit of a twist, though, and it's a fun twist that goes along with the ridiculous plot line that it follows. It's a great performance piece. I mean, you have, Joey Pants doing this homeless character, and Joey is another guy who comes back several times. There are a few guys who come back several times in these episodes. Michael Ironside is in a few different episodes. Miguel Ferrer is in a few different episodes. Lance Henriksen, Joey Pants is in another one with Joe Pesci. And so, yeah, he's one of the guys who hold the series up. And this is one of his best early starring roles is Ulrich the Undying in my number one favorite pick from Tales from the Crypt, guys. Dig that cat. He's real gone. All right, guys, that's all we've got for this episode. That's my top 10 favorite Tales from the Crypt episodes ever. If you've never seen the series, I have a friend from Canada who told me that they didn't have it there in the 90s. I think you should go check it out. I think you'll love it. You can't take it seriously. I think it has aged pretty well considering it's a 90s show, and if you look at it as kind of a comic book thing like Creep Show, Tales from the Crypt, even the older film Tales from the Crypt, if you look at it in those terms, I think you're going to enjoy it. They do have great effects. They were allowed to get away with whatever they wanted to at HBO when they were making this. So, yeah, you can find all the episodes here on Jay vs. Horror. We have them all uploaded for you. And, guys, I'm even going to put the links in the description for all these episodes. So you can go straight to those episodes and watch them if you want to, or you can just go down the list and watch them all. We want to encourage everybody out there, if you want to take a crack at making your list, it doesn't have to be your top 10 favorite. It can be your top 10, like I said, villains, or your top 10 most hilarious episodes, or best effect, or best episodes with effects, best stories, whatever you guys enjoy the most. We totally encourage you guys to do your own top 10s, and we'll put them up here and we'll let everybody listen to them, or I'll read them off for you when we do another episode. So our next episode, the next one I'm going to do is my top 10 villains. My top 10 bad guys in Tales from the Crypt history. And hopefully by the time we get to that episode, we'll have some more lined up for other people. And guys, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you the next time we've got something worth talking about. Bye.